Hello and welcome back to episode 2. This is like the fourth time I've tried to get this episode done, but the first time I did it, I guess the mic had died and I didn't notice. So I was talking for a half hour and I didn't notice that I wasn't being recorded. So I have to start over. Everything that I said is lost, but it's okay because I can do it again, right? Okay, episode 2 is going to be dedicated to 9/11 and the 20th anniversary. I wanted to do a special edition because I feel like there's a lot of things that people don't know about 9/11, and it's something that's been sitting with me for about 10 to 15 years now. Um, I've tried to share a few things on Facebook, but I either get like the laugh reaction or people's react with the mad face. Um, the people I went to school with and the types of people that I were friends with on Facebook, they wouldn't normally understand what I'm talking about. And even though you can easily research this stuff, they still refuse to believe. So this episode is dedicated to the 9/11 conspiracy, and I hate to say that because people relate conspiracy with not being the truth or made up. But like I said, there's tons of evidence online and YouTube that you can look at. This is the 9/11 conspiracy demolition setup. Okay, so this was important for me to speak on because not a lot of people know about what's going on, and it just kind of goes over their head. And since I got my platform and my microphone to speak, I'm going to speak on it. I want to start with first of all George Bush lying about seeing the first plane hit the tower. There was no way that he could have seen the first plane hit the tower because at the time he was busy in a whole nother state reading a book to a class of elementary students. I can't remember what grade they were in. In order for him to see the first plane hit the tower, he would have had to seen it over the news because he was not in New York at the time. And the reason why it was not on the news at the time is because nobody knew that this was going to happen. So if they knew it was going to happen, it would have been recorded, but it wasn't. There wouldn't have been anybody out there to see the first plane hit because they didn't know it was going to happen. So yeah, he straight up lied about that. There was no news, there was no videos, there was no proof, no recordings of the first plane hitting because they didn't know it was going to happen. Nobody was standing out there to record because they didn't know it was going to happen. And I have to repeat myself because there's just so many facts that are blatantly in your face and no people still refuse to believe. The next thing I want to talk about is the Twin Towers are depicted burning on the $20 bill. Yes, if you fold the $20 bill the right way, you can see that the Twin Towers are burning. Now, I'm not sure how old this $20 bill is, but I'm sure it's going back before 9/11 happened. And also, the Twin Towers are depicted burning down in numerous cartoons and comic books and movies dating back as far as 50 years ago. So, this was something that's definitely been predicted. And I'm going to get into why this whole thing went down. So, the US is money hungry. We all know that. What keeps this government running is money on drugs. Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, they're all very, what can I say, luscious fields. They're full of things like oil, drugs, cocaine, opioids. The resources are unlimited there. So they needed a reason to invade those countries. So if they set up a terrorist attack and made it look like the Muslims did it, they would they would have a reason to go invade those countries. They didn't want to look like the bad guy and just go over there and start dictating stuff. So what do you do? You put fear in Americans' hearts. You put fear in their eyes and their mind. You tell them that the Muslims are terrorists and they're attacking. So we as Americans, um, we feel like them going over there to invade is justified. Secondly, I would like to talk about jet fuel melting steel beams. That's completely impossible. Those buildings are damn near indestructible, and they are compartmentalized. So if a fire breaks out in one level of the building, it's not going to go up, it's not going to go down because the sections, each floor is just like apartments. They're separated to contain fires in the building. Now, secondly, you can see, and this is why I'm so baffled by this. You can clearly see in the videos when the tower goes down, you can see explosions on each level of the building, each floor. You can see a little light going off. This was a controlled demolition, and no one seems to believe it. when they're when they're tearing down buildings to build new ones, they have controlled demolitions to where the building falls inward and not outward. So when they blow those floors up, you can see the building collapsing and going inward. No, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because it's just now hitting the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. It's been 20 years of lies and manipulation. And every year people throw up their dedications and their memorials, and it's something terrible because a lot of people died, but I just think it's BS that nobody knows what's really going on. All of this is happening right now during the pandemic, and I'm going to get into this crazy weather that's been going on. I'm going to get into that later for Hot Topics. Okay, so that's it for the first half. This second half for Hot Topics is going to be dedicated to 9/11 and some of the things that relate to this story. I know it's supposed to be covering celebrity gossip, but today I wanted to do a wokeness, a wokeness edition. Okay, so stay tuned for the next section. Okay, we're back with Hot Topics. Now, this time it's going to be dedicated to 9/11 and some topics that I felt were related to this topic. So, first up, we have crazy weather. Obviously, there's a bunch of shit going on right now with hurricanes and fires, not just in the US where I'm based, but all around the world. Um, I felt that this was important to talk about because um in the book of Revelation, if you're familiar with the Bible, it talks about people, well, at the end before Jesus comes to save everyone. And I'm not a big Jesus head, but I do know the Bible, and I know I know how to read. I can understand everything perfectly. It fits this story to a T. In the Bible, in the book of Revelation, right before Jesus comes, it says that people who don't die of fire and water will die of disease. Now, we have hurricanes flooding the East Coast. We have hurricanes flooding the South. We have fires all on the West Coast. And that's just in the US. I'm not even talking about the rest of the world right now. I'm talking about the US. Um, Fire, water, and then we're going through a pandemic still. So I just thought that was kind of eerie. Um, it's something I've been trying not to think about because I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know what's going to happen, but obviously things like this have been predicted over time. I feel like um history repeats itself. The Bible has been written over so many times and rewritten and translated and translated. So who knows what's really going on? But how would they know that a lot of people would be wiped out by a pandemic, diseases, and not only that, but fire and water? Okay, so I thought that was pretty eerie. The next topic I'm gonna talk about is the. Oh, sorry. The next topic I'm talking about is a harp. Not a lot of people. A lot. A harp is a machine that was created by the government and it manipulates the weather. This harp slash machine can be depicted on the $100 bill. On the new $100 bill, the blue ones with I think it's an orange stripe on there. If you fold it the right way, you can see that it is a harp. Now, a harp is HAARP. You can Google this. It's a machine that manipulates the weather and the government made it. I found out I found this out I guess I don't know 10 years ago, and some of this stuff is just resonating with me because of the crazy hurricanes that we've had back to back. I think it's been 3 hurricanes in the last month. So I wanted to bring that up. I'll repeat myself. It's called a harp, HAARP, and it's a machine that manipulates the weather, and it was built and created by the government. Okay, now this next topic relates to not only the pandemic, but something that goes back into the book of Revelation. Joe Biden is requiring all businesses with over 100 employees to get the vaccine. If you don't get the vaccine, you can't go anywhere, you can't go to places. So I thought that was um, pretty strange that they're now requiring everyone to get this vaccine, otherwise you can't do anything. This relates to the book of Revelation again, where if you don't take the mark of the beast, you will die. Um, and I know that seems far-fetched. Like I said, the Bible has been rewritten many, many of times, but I thought that was really strange and something that was related to that. Um, there was a news clip I seen on YouTube the other day, and a lady was talking on the news. She was a news anchor, and she was saying that they have a machine now that can tell by body temperature or whatever. They can tell who's had the vaccine and who hasn't. Um, this shit is starting to drive me nuts, low key. Yeah, I just thought that was pretty crazy that now they're requiring everyone to get the vaccine. My mom got COVID last year in December. Um, I like to think that my immune system is pretty strong. Like I was around her, I didn't get anything. So for me, I wouldn't want to get the vaccine, but this is all just crazy to me. I'm not a firm believer on Jesus, but I grew up that way. Um, Fortunately, after I turned about 14, I was able to make decisions for myself and I stopped going to church because of the type of church I was going to. It was pretty toxic, but I was still raised that way. So I know the Bible. I know right from wrong. I've heard stories of Revelation. I've read it. We've read it as a class in Bible study. Um, it's just something that's been in the back of my mind, and I thought that was a coincidence. Okay, the last topic I'm going to be talking about is the fact that no one is paying attention or seems to care that the world is on fire and flooding. I'm in the Midwest right now, and it seems like a perfect summer slash fall. There's nothing going on. I think the last time it stormed, it caused a little bit of damage. There were some trees, but that's what we're used to here. We kind of get the lighter effect of storms. But it just seems like we're in a different world. There's no flooding here. There's no fires. Um, People are distracted by social media and satire news that's being pumped out through like CNN and ABC. I heard they were even like lying about the death numbers from the flooding and the hurricane. So I thought that was pretty crazy too. Yeah, it just seems like nothing's going on here. And I'm worried about what the winter is going to be like because if we're not getting any of that weather right now, it's going to be a crazy winter. And I'm trying to get the hell out of Dodge. No Stratus. Um, okay, I have one more topic to talk about, and I thought this was kind of not that important because it has to relate to celebrities, but um, it was um, it was brought to my attention that when fucked up shit is going on in the world, celebrities start acting out and they start acting a ass so that we will focus on what they're doing and not what's really going on in the world. So I wanted to bring up this topic because it was a little strange to me. Um, Lots of celebrities have been posting nude photos lately, and not fully nude, but very risque. I wrote down a couple of names that I've seen. I don't have the articles right now, but the first name I'm going to bring up is Brittany. She recently posted two topless photos, and then she posted a picture in her thong, and I'm like, really? She's never been that type to do that. She's been, the sex kitten, the slave for you. We get that, but she's never, ever posted an explicit photo like this. It, it was eerie to me. Now the next one is going to be David Beckham. He posted a picture of his ass showing, and he was laying face down in the pool as if he was drowning or passed out. So I thought that one was really crazy. The next one is going to be Mary J. Blige. She just posted a picture laying naked on the beach. Now, I know that in the industry, you're supposed to be sexy, sex sells. So the normal person would just dismiss it as, oh, that's what you're supposed to do in the music industry. You're supposed to be sexy. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to do that. But I also think that they are they have a big enough following that if they posted something like that, a little news article about some school shooting or somebody getting ran over, that article is not going to stand a chance next to an article about a naked celebrity. I'm just sorry. It's not going to happen. It was strange to me that all of a sudden everybody's getting naked now that all this crazy shit is going on. That was the last topic I had. Wow, this is really weird recording it from my apartment and not downtown and hearing all the sirens and shit, all the motorcycles putting across the street. Well, I think that's it for Hot Topics. I didn't want to get too carried away with this 9/11 edition, but since my first episode was, well, the first recording and the second recording was deleted, I had to sort of I had to sort of, I don't know, I was trying to rush and pump this episode out before it hits 12 o'clock because I wanted this to go out on 9/11. So, yes, I wanted to get this out on 9/11 because numbers are important. So, that's it. The next episode, I'm probably going to go back into the regular schedule, the regular topics. It's not probably going to be so woke. Like I said, this channel is going to be 60% celebrity news and gossip with 40% wokeness. I wanted to, I wanted my content to mean something. I just didn't want it to be the normal gossipy news and reviews. I wanted to actually drop a gem on you every now and then. So thank you for enjoying episode 2, the 9/11 edition, and I'll see you I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure out what days I want to do this. I know I'm going to do it twice a week. I'm thinking Monday and Friday. Monday would be covering the weekend topics, and Friday would be covering what happened throughout the week. So I think I'm going to be doing that Monday and Friday. Alrighty, thank you for listening, and this is Shade and Tea with Kitty B. Thank you. Bye bye. This next section is brand new. I'm coming back in a year later to post this. I'm going to be adding TikTok videos to the second half of this podcast for episodes and stuff like that. I'm going to be doing hot topics, but it's not going to be celebrity based. I'm going to be reporting some important things as far as, examples like the Queen's death and stuff like that. It's not going to be celebrity driven. So Hot Topics is taking on a brand new take. And now I'm going to be uploading some TikTok videos that I think are important, and they definitely relate to this topic that I'm going to be talking about. So without further ado, let's get into some videos. Hopefully that's a little bit more entertaining than just me talking on here. So yeah, here's part 2.
Time. We will now strike at the heart of American defense and destroy the Pentagon with one swift and deadly blow.
Oh, I'd love to see New York. We could all go with the bus company's special Super Sitter fare.
$9? This one's on me.
Where bonbons play. Let's hope Osama bin Laden doesn't know show tunes. God, I hope I get it. I hope I get it. How many people does he need? How many boys? How many girls? Wait and see!
You were booked on the flight from Boston that hit the South Tower. And you didn't get on it.
Was late. I missed it. Coincidences do happen.
I was booked on the first flight that hit the tower, and
A small demonstration of our sinister strength should convince the world of our supreme power.
The Legion of Doom is about to begin its reign of terror.
Now, starting things off with a top-down shooter from 1989 by the name of Master Weapon. This game is your normal top-down shoot-'em-up game where the player controls a spaceship with upgradable weapons, and actually the first level of this game features 2 skyscraper buildings in a decimated city that eerily resemble the Twin Towers. And what's crazy about this is that these towers can actually be destroyed, and when they get destroyed, the buildings actually pancake to the ground in the same fashion and way that the Twin Towers did in real life. And if that's not enough to convince you that this game from 1989 could have predicted 9/11, well, this next part might, because once you actually start the game, an introduction sequence appears saying that the events of the game take place on September 11th, 1990X. And out of all of the dates that these developers could have chosen for this game to take place, they chose September 11th. And that's what lands this game, once again from 1989, in the #1 spot for this video. Next up, we have a game by the name of Deus Ex that was released in June of 2000. And in one of this game's menu levels, the player is actually able to explore a small area around Liberty Island. And the first thing you're going to notice is that the Statue of Liberty's head has been destroyed and it's no longer on the body of Lady Liberty. As well as being on this island, you actually get to take a look at the New York City skyline, and upon first glance, one of the first things that you're probably going to notice is that the World Trade Centers are actually absent from this New York City skyline. And it makes you wonder, did these game developers predict 9/11? Because this game was released, of course, in June of 2000. Now, we actually have two explanations for the absence of the World Trade Center in the game Deus Ex. And the first one actually is an in-game explanation for the building's absence, and it's basically stated that they were destroyed by terrorists. And this is kind of backed up by the claim that the Statue of Liberty has been destroyed as well. And I believe in-game the Statue of Liberty was destroyed in 1997, and we can only assume that maybe the Twin Towers were destroyed with them. But the actual reason for the exclusion of the World Trade Center in Deus Ex was due to quote-unquote memory constraints, and this actually comes from the developers of this game. However, this explanation has been tested by actually adding in new textures to the game that feature the World Trade Center along the New York City skyline, and the game ran perfectly fine. There was no memory constraints or anything of that nature, and it makes you wonder, why would these developers remove one of the most prominent, eye-catching set of buildings upon the New York City skyline, opposed to maybe removing some smaller buildings that nobody would really take note of? So, who knows what's going on there? Were these developers getting their Nostradamus on just a year before the attacks on the World Trade Center? We'll most likely never know. Now, last but not least, we have a Flash game by the name of Trade Center Defender that was actually released in early 2001, just a few months prior to the events of 9/11, of course, and the objective of this game was to gun down planes that headed towards the towers that were trying to destroy them, and you just shoot them down before they get to the towers. And if one plane hit the tower, it would catch on fire, and if two planes hit the towers, of course, the tower that was hit, it would actually collapse into itself and pancake to the ground. And if one was destroyed, then you had another chance to protect just the remaining tower, and if both were destroyed, you would just have to restart the game. And what's interesting is you might say, okay, it's Trade Center Defender, it's just two buildings you're protecting from planes hitting, which of course raises some flags there, but actually the file name for this game was WTC.exe, WorldTradeCenter.exe, so that kind of proves that these are the World Trade Centers that we're defending there.
As if a demolition team set off when you see the old demolitions of these old buildings.
It looks like one of those scenes of an old building being purposely dynamited and blown up.
Anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under-infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
The way the structure is collapsing, this was the result of something that was planned. It's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse in exactly the same way. How they accomplished this, we don't know.
The building collapsed to dust. You don't find a desk. You don't find a chair. You don't find a telephone, a computer. The biggest piece of the telephone I found was half of the keypad, and it was about this big.
What happened to the concrete? Concrete was pulverized from river to river. It was dust powder, 2-3 inches thick. The concrete was just pulverized.
In addition to those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
I heard a second explosion.
There was a heavy-duty explosion.
There was a secondary explosions and then subsequent collapses.
Explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
To me, it sounded like an explosion.
It sounded like gunfire. Bang, 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 bang. And then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
We heard a big explosion coming down. And then the entire top of the building just blew up.
We saw some kind of explosion.
By the force of the explosion.
Big explosion. Blew us back up to the 8th floor.
Then we get to the lobby, there's this big explosion.
The lobby looked as though a bomb had exploded there.
A huge explosion now raining debris.
It's been a huge explosion.
Huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
We just witnessed some kind of follow-up explosion.
We heard a very loud blast and explosion.
Talking a secondary explosion at Tower 110.
That is another bomb going off. He thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building. Planted in the building.
don't think anybody could have predicted that they would try to use an airplane as a missile, a hijacked airplane as a missile.
Nobody in our government, at least, and I don't think the prior government that could envision flying airplanes into buildings.
No specific threat involving really domestic operation or involving what happened, obviously, the city's airliner and so.
There were no warning signs that I'm aware of.
USA Today reports that in the 2 years before the attacks on September the 11th, NORAD conducted exercises using hijacked airliners as weapons. And one target was the World Trade Center.
In confidential documents from the Philippines obtained by CNN, the plan was clear. He will board any American commercial aircraft, control its cockpit, and dive it at the CIA headquarters. Other buildings targeted the Pentagon and the World Trade Center.
Security and counterterrorism was blinking red, in the words of George Tenet, that the warnings of an imminent attack were so severe that something dramatic should have been done. It was unparalleled. Instead, our president went on a month-long vacation.
The head of Pakistani intelligence of the ISI, Mahmoud Ahmed, requested Omar Sheikh to wire $100,000 to Mohammed Atta, who was the lead hijacker.
Hijacker Mohammed Atta received wire transfers via Pakistan. The man sending the money to Atta is believed to be Ahmed Umar Saeed Sheikh.
Omar Sheikh admitted he was supported by the Pakistan government's intelligence service, the ISI.
Although we are told that 4 or 5 of the alleged hijackers were on each of the flights. If so, their names should have been on the flight manifests. But the flight manifests that have been released contain neither the names of the alleged hijackers nor any Arab names whatsoever.
We know that the men who were supposedly the hijackers had their houses, cars, credit cards paid for by the U.S. government. They were in truth agents.
Evidence was also apparently planted. The passport of one of the hijackers on Flight 11 was allegedly found in the rubble.
Goes through the fireball, through the side of the plane, and comes down the ground unscathed. But something happened. For 6 months, they reported they had this passport. Boy, we've got it. We've got the proof. And then the guy stood up and was alive.
Several of these 19 men are still alive.
Of course we're after Saddam Hussein, bin Laden. He's
January 2000.
Of course we're after Saddam Hussein, bin Laden. He's
January 2001. The Bush administration orders the FBI and intelligence agencies to back off investigations involving the bin Laden family, including 2 of Osama bin Laden's relatives, who were living, guess where, in Falls Church, Virginia, right next to CIA headquarters.
When he was already America's most wanted criminal, he reportedly spent 2 weeks in the American hospital in Dubai, was treated by an American doctor, and visited by the local CIA agent.
We have not seen one piece of evidence that links Osama bin Laden directly to the planning stages of September 11th.
This failure to provide proof was later said to be unnecessary because bin Laden, in a video allegedly found in Afghanistan, admitted responsibility for the attacks. This confession is now widely cited as proof. But the man in this video has darker skin, fuller cheeks, and a broader nose than the Osama bin Laden of all other videos. We again seem to have planted evidence.
In 1976, Osama's older brother Salim bin Laden hired a man in Texas by the name of Jim Bath to handle all the investments in the United States for the bin Laden family. Jim Bath also happens to be a personal, almost lifelong friend and former Air National Guard pilot with George W. Bush. The connections between the Bushes and the bin Ladens become much more clear when George Herbert Walker Bush made trips to Saudi Arabia in 1998 and 2000 to meet with the bin Laden family on behalf of a company called the Carlyle Group.
How could anyone fly a 60-ton, 125-foot wide, 44-foot tall plane through this obstacle course?
The aircraft, before striking the Pentagon, reportedly executed a 270-degree downward spiral, and yet Hani Hanjour was known as a terrible pilot who could not safely fly even a small plane.
No seats, no luggage, no bodies. Nothing but bricks and limestone.
The official explanation is that the intense heat from the jet fuel vaporized the entire plane. Flight 77 had 2 Rolls-Royce engines made of steel and titanium alloy and weigh 6 tons each. It is scientifically impossible that 12 tons of steel and titanium was vaporized by jet fuel.
We're also told that the bodies were able to be identified either by their fingerprints or by the DNA.
From my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. And as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand.
Shortly after the strike, government agents picked up debris and carried it off. The entire lawn was covered with dirt and gravel, so that any remaining forensic evidence was literally covered up. The videos from security cameras, which would show what really hit the Pentagon, were immediately confiscated by agents of the FBI. And the Department of Justice has to this day refused to release them. If these videos would prove that the Pentagon was really hit by a 757, most of us would assume the government would release them.
It looks like there's nothing there except for a hole in the ground.
Basically, that's right. The only thing you could see from where we were was a big gouge in the earth and some broken trees. We could see some people walking around in the area, but from where we could see, there wasn't much left.
Any large pieces of debris at all?
No, there was nothing that you could distinguish that a plane had crashed there.
Pancake theory, according to which the fires, while not melting the steel, heated it up sufficiently to cause the floors weakened by the airplane strikes to break loose from the steel columns, and this started a chain reaction.
So you would expect then from that theory, which is the official theory, to see a whole stack of floors piled up on top of each other and then a spindle of core columns standing too.
The core of each of the twin towers consisted of 47 massive steel columns. If the floors had broken loose from them, these columns would have still been sticking up into the air 1,000 feet.
The plane did not cut all those core columns.
We designed the buildings to take the impact of the Boeing 707 hitting the building at any location.
The building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners.
That the plane flew straight into the building?
Through him, right. Yeah.
So you're saying that the building was actually designed to cope with a hole like that and still survive?
Yeah, it was.
If you had dropped, say, a billiard ball from the top of the World Trade Center, 110 floors up there, it would have taken 8 to 10 seconds to hit the ground, encountering no resistance whatsoever.
The Twin Towers came down in nearly free fall speed. 200,000 tons of steel shatters and explodes outwards over 500 feet.
This means that floors shattered at an average rate of about 10 floors per second.
There is no scenario for a pancake effect of buildings falling that allows them to fall at the rate of free fall.
Now what can do that? What can move mass out of the way? Explosives. 47 huge steel columns going up the core. They're interconnected. How do you get them to fail simultaneously so the core disappears? It looks like those core columns were cut.
The way we do this is by cutting the beam at an angle.
I started looking at the molten metal. All three buildings, both towers in the rubble, in the basement areas, and Building 7, there's these pools of molten metal.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails, like you're in a foundry. Like lava.
The molten steel was found 3, 4, and 5 weeks later, when the rubble was being removed. He said that molten steel was also found underneath World Trade Center 7.
So I'm looking through the official reports. What do they say about the molten metal? They say nothing. Now, wait a minute. This is important evidence. So where'd that come from? Thermite is so hot that it'll just cut through steel, through structural steel, for example, like a knife through butter. The products are molten iron and aluminum oxide, which goes off primarily as a dust. You know those enormous dust clouds? You can imagine when you assemble these chemicals on a large scale. Molten metal pools under both towers after they collapsed, and Building 7. Now, Building 7 wasn't even hit by a jet.
Part of the problem is that most people simply don't know much about Building 7 due to the extraordinary secrecy surrounding this collapse.
And this was a 47-story skyscraper. This building fell at 5:25.
It was not hit by a plane. This building had fires on only 2 or 3 floors.
And it was brought down by what we know was a controlled demolition.
Demolitions, they look just like that. You know, a kink in the middle, and then that building just comes straight down, almost at free fall speed.
They first blow one of the central columns so the building falls in on itself. Building 7 had a classic crimp or wedge. Its central column was blown out first, so it didn't structurally damage buildings just a few feet away from it.
Our office was on the B1 level. As I was talking to a supervisor at 8:46, and all of a sudden we hear, boom! An explosion so hard that pushed us upwards. And it came from the basement between the B2 level and the B3 level. And when I went to verbalize, we hear, boom! The impact of the plane on the top.
As I'm walking by the main freight corridor building in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion threw me to the floor, and that's when everything started happening. All of a sudden, a big impact happened again, and all the ceiling tile was falling down, the light fixtures were falling. You know, you got to go clear across the whole from 1 to 2 World Trade Center, and then all of a sudden, it happened all over again. Something else hit us to the floor. Right in the basement, you felt it. Walls were caving in, everything that was going on. I mean, I know of people that got killed in the basement. I know of people that got broken legs in the basement. People that got reconstructive surgery because the walls hit them in the face.
According to standard operating procedure, if an FAA flight controller notices anything that suggests a possible hijacking, the controller is to contact a superior. If the problem cannot be fixed within about a minute, the superior is to ask NORAD, the North American Aerospace Command, to send up or scramble jet fighters to find out what is going on. NORAD then issues a scramble order to the nearest Air Force base with fighters on alert. But although interceptions usually occur within 10 or so minutes, in this case, 80 or so minutes had elapsed before fighters were even airborne.
It's a mind-bending anomaly. Not a single U.S. Air Force interceptor turns a wheel until it's too late. There are no jets at all.
What if they were so confused and had been so deliberately confused that they couldn't respond?
The reason that they didn't know where to go was because a number of conflicting and overlapping war game exercises were taking place. It involved the insertion of false radar blips onto radar screens in the Northeast Air Defense Sector.
Center Team U, we have a problem here. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York. We need someone to scramble some F-16s. We have a hijacked aircraft headed towards New York. We need someone to scramble some F-16s or something up there to help us out.
Is this real world or exercise? Is this real world or exercise? There was another exercise, Vigilant Warrior, which was in fact, according to a NORAD source, a live-fly hijack drill being conducted at the same time. With only 8 available fighter aircraft, and they have to be dispatched in pairs, they were dealing with as many as 22 possible hijacks on the day of 9/11, and they couldn't separate the war game exercises from the actual hijacks.
Page 172. The U.S. government has not been able to determine the origin of the money used for the 9/11 attacks. Ultimately, the question is of little practical significance.
The American authorities have not managed to trace the source of the funding, and then the most amazingly disingenuous statement ultimately is it of little consequence. It is of massive consequence.
Doesn't it matter who paid for 9/11?
The collapse of Building 7 has been recognized as especially difficult to explain. The 9/11 Commission report implicitly admitted that it could not explain the collapse of this building by not even mentioning it.
President, why are you and the Vice President insisting on appearing together before the 9/11 Commission?
Because the 9/11 Commission wants to ask us questions. That's why we're meeting, and I look forward to meeting with them and answering their questions.
Why you're appearing together rather than separately, which was their request?
Because it's a good chance for both of us to answer questions that the 9/11 Commission is looking forward to asking us, and I'm looking forward to answering them. Let's see.
Do you think they should be able to stand up and speak their own words?
They should go under oath.
They should be, yeah.
In public.
Don't you think that the families deserve to have a transcript or to be able to see what you
Adam,
said?
you asked me that question yesterday. I got the same answer, yeah.
The final report was a unanimous report. That means that if there was a single commissioner who had...
The 9/11 Commission report implicitly admitted that it could not explain the collapse of this building by not even mentioning it.
President, why are you and the Vice President insisting on appearing together before the 9/11 Commission?
Because the 9/11 Commission wants to ask us questions. That's why we're meeting, and I look forward to meeting with them and answering their questions.
Why you're appearing together rather than separately, which was their request?
Because it's a good chance for both of us to answer questions that the 9/11 Commission is looking forward to asking us, and I'm looking forward to answering them. Let's see.
Do you think they should be able to stand up and speak their own words?
They should go under oath.
They should be, yeah.
In public.
Don't you think that the families deserve to have a transcript or to be able to see what you
Adam,
said?
you asked me that question yesterday. I got the same answer, yeah.
The final report was a unanimous report. That means that if there was a single commissioner who had any objection about anything, that fact would be dropped from the report.
We have found out that he not only served on the transition team of the Bush administration,
that he was a person who wrote a draft memo for the setup of the Bush administration's National Security Council, that he was an individual who wrote the preemptive war strategy that was eventually used for the war in Iraq, that he is a close friend of Condoleezza Rice's. We want him to resign.
There is literally nothing in the 9/11 report that the Bush administration did not approve of.
We can understand, therefore, why the Commission, under Zelikow's leadership, would have ignored all the evidence that would point to the truth, that 9/11 was a false flag operation intended to authorize the doctrines and funds needed for a new level of imperial mobilization.
Armed with knives, armed with chemical, biological, nuclear weapons. Fanatics, terrorists, September 11th. September 11th, killers, September 11th, terrorists. Terrorists of Al-Qaeda, terrorists, nuclear weapons, terrorists. 9/11, terror, terrorist, evil. September 11th, September 11th.
The terrorists, war and danger. September 11th, terrorism, global terrorism, terrorism, terrorists, 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 the terror, terrorists, terrorist, terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism, terrorist, terrorism. September 11th, world terrorism, terrorism. September 11th, global terrorism.
September the 11th, terror. Weapons of mass destruction. September the 11th, September the 11th.
The entire U.S. ruling class, ruling elite, comes to see terrorism as the preferred means, indeed the only means, to provide social cohesion, to provide an enemy image for the society to keep it together. According to neocon theory from Carl Schmitt, you have to have an enemy image in order to have a society. It's a very dangerous thing, because now it means that the entire social order, the political parties, intellectual life, politics in general, all based on a monstrous myth. Monstrous myth.
Look, the CIA has done in this country, what they've done to us is unbelievable. Look at the terrorist acts that have occurred. The CIA behind most, if not all of them. We had the Marine barracks. We had our embassy in Kenya. We had Pan Am 103. We had the USS Cole. We had Oklahoma City. We had the World Trade Center in 1993.
That helped the terrorists blow up the World Trade Center the first time. They built the bomb. They got the driver's license.
The informant, the FBI informant, a fellow named Salam, a 43-year-old former Egyptian army officer, he was given the assignment to put the bomb together. And he went to his supervisor, his FBI supervisor, and said, we're going to put a dummy bomb in here, right? And the FBI supervisor said, no, we're going to put a real bomb.
The FBI actually carried out the attack on the World Trade Center in 1993. They actually hired Ahmad Salam and paid him $1 million and gave him real explosives, a detonator, and told him to build a bomb and to give it to the foolish people that he was controlling to allow them to attack the World Trade Center complex.
Unfortunately for them, there were only 6 people killed, not enough to pass the legislation. So what happened is 2 years later, April 19, 1995, down comes Oklahoma City Murrah building, 168 people killed. 1 year later, the anti-terrorism legislation that takes away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties is passed.